In India, there have been many murders that left people in fear, but today, the incident we are going to talk about was one of the most terrifying among them. There was a massacre in our country that not only shook Jamshedpur, but the entire Jharkhand. At that time, every newspaper headline was discussing this case. People in every street and every marketplace were talking about it. The incident was so horrifying that people still shudder when they recall it. So, let's begin this dreadful story. In 1999, Chaitali Bhaumik's family lived in the Telco colony of Jamshedpur, Jharkhand. This colony was specially built for industrial workers where people from far-off places settled for work. Chaitali Bhaumik was also employed in the Telco company, which is why his family resided there. The family consisted of 5 members: Chaitali Bhaumik, his wife Lucky, their son Kalyan, their daughter Chaitali, and the children's grandmother, Anita. Like every day, Chaitali had breakfast in the morning and left for work. After lunch in the afternoon, Kalyan went outside to play. Now, only 3 people remained in the house: Chaitali, her mother Lucky, and her grandmother Anita. Usually, Lucky and Anita spent their free time chatting with the neighbors, but after that day, no one came out of the house. A strange silence took over the home. 2 or 3 days later, neighbors saw Chaitali outside the house. When they asked her about her family, she said they had gone to attend a relative's wedding. Saying this, she quickly went back inside. For a few days, Chaitali continued to be seen, but then she too suddenly disappeared. Now the entire family was missing. Neighbors, relatives, and acquaintances found it strange that no one had seen any family member for so many days. Meanwhile, at the Telco company, people were also growing concerned about Chaitali's absence. The question was, where did the entire family suddenly vanish? Many days had passed, yet Chaitali had not reported to work. The company employees visited his house in the Telco area several times, but every time they found the house locked. No one could find any information about Chaitali. Eventually, after many attempts, even the company officials stopped looking for him. The neighbors also found it odd that a family that had lived in that house for so long had suddenly disappeared. However, when they had asked Chaitali earlier, she had told them that her family had gone to attend a wedding. Time kept passing, and 6 months went by. During this period, Chaitali's maternal uncle, who was a doctor, realized that it had been a long time since he had spoken to his sister and mother. He tried calling Chaitali's landline several times, but every time, the phone rang and got disconnected. No one was answering. When this started to trouble him greatly, he called Chaitali's office. There, he learned that Chaitali had not been coming to work for several months. Hearing this, Chaitali's uncle became even more worried. However, due to his busy medical practice, he could not find the time to investigate. But in the month of June, he finally decided to go to Telco Colony himself to check on his sister's home. When he arrived, he saw that the house was locked. He then started asking the neighbors, who told him that since January, no one had been seen in that house. Some time ago, they had seen Chaitali living alone in the house. When they asked her about her family, she said they had gone to attend a wedding. But a few days later, Chaitali also locked the house and left. Hearing this, Chaitali's uncle was shocked because he knew that in the past 7 to 8 months, none of their relatives had any wedding, nor had he received any invitation. His brother-in-law and sister's sudden disappearance deeply worried him. Overcome with concern, he began walking around the house, thinking of what to do next. As he wandered, he reached the back of the house, where the toilet septic tank was located. The tank was covered with 2 or 3 heavy lids to keep it sealed. As they proceeded with the cleaning, their eyes fell upon something strange. One of the lids was completely sealed with cement, while the others were simply placed on top of the tank. Seeing this, Mamaji was shocked. A sense of suspicion crept into his mind. Why was this particular lid sealed so securely? Mamaji had visited this house several times before, but he had never seen the septic tank lid in such a state. When he noticed the fresh cement plaster, his doubts deepened. Without wasting any time, he rushed to the nearest police station and filed a missing persons report for 5 individuals. The police were equally stunned. How could an entire family disappear overnight? Upon receiving the report, they immediately reached the site. First, they broke the lock and entered the house with Chaitali's uncle accompanying them. The house appeared normal at first glance, but when they examined the back area, they noticed fresh cement plaster. The house had been vacant for 6 months, so the presence of newly applied cement raised even more suspicion. Acting on this doubt, the police decided to remove the lid of the septic tank. The moment they lifted it, everyone was horrified by the sight inside. Human body parts were floating in the tank. The police immediately sealed off the area and called in the forensic team. The body parts were sent for post-mortem, DNA analysis, and other forensic tests. During the investigation, the police learned that Chaitali had been seen around the house even after her family's disappearance, but she too had suddenly vanished. This raised strong suspicions against her. The forensic report later confirmed that the remains belonged to 4 different people. The police were puzzled. There were supposed to be 5 members in the house, but only 4 bodies were accounted for. This indicated that one person was still alive, and that person could very well be Chaitali. Neighbors confirmed that Chaitali was the last person seen at the house, while the rest of the family had already gone missing. Following this revelation, the missing persons case was converted into a murder investigation. The forensic team combed through every corner of Chaitali Bhaumik's house, collecting all possible evidence, including fingerprints. But every clue led back to Chaitali. When the police questioned the neighbors, they uncovered another crucial detail. Chaitali had been in a relationship with a boy named Rizwan. Further investigation revealed that Rizwan was a state-level cricketer who had even played in the Ranji Trophy. Many believed he had the potential to become a big name in cricket. Chaitali had befriended him, but her family strongly disapproved of the relationship. This only deepened the police's suspicion that Rizwan might be involved in the murders. Determined to track them down, the police launched a massive search for Chaitali and Rizwan. However, they couldn't be found anywhere. Then, something shocking happened. Chaitali and Rizwan voluntarily surrendered at the police station. To everyone's horror, Chaitali confessed that she had murdered her parents, brother, and grandmother. With permission from the court, the police began a rigorous interrogation. What came to light sent shivers down everyone's spine. Chaitali had always been an independent-minded girl who did what she pleased, regardless of her parents' objections. She studied at Sacred Heart Convent School in Jamshedpur, but academics never interested her. Near her school was a cricket stadium where national and international matches were often played. Many state-level cricketers trained there, and it was there that she first met Rizwan. No one could have imagined that this innocent friendship would later take such a horrifying turn. Chaitali was passionate about cricket and frequently visited the stadium to watch matches. It was the year 1998 when she first saw Rizwan Khan practicing. He was a skilled cricketer, determined to make a name for himself in the sport. Each time she visited, she found herself drawn to him, watching him play with admiration. Eventually, she mustered the courage to strike up a conversation with him. Initially, they only discussed cricket, but over time, their bond grew stronger. Neither of them realized when their friendship transformed into deep love. They couldn't imagine life without each other. However, there was a major obstacle. Chaitali was still too young for marriage, and Rizwan's career had just begun. Moreover, Chaitali's family had no idea about their relationship. Despite these challenges, their love only deepened, and they became extremely close. One day, Chaitali discovered she was pregnant. Faced with this reality, the couple secretly got married in court. They kept their marriage hidden from Chaitali's family, but she knew that her pregnancy wouldn't remain a secret forever. Eventually, she gathered the courage to confess everything to her mother. The revelation caused an uproar in the household. Her parents scolded her harshly and tried to convince her that this relationship was not right. They outright refused to accept Rizwan as their son-in-law and even threatened to disown her if she continued the marriage. What happened next took the entire city by storm. Chaitali's family's reaction deeply hurt her. She started seeing her own family members as enemies. Her parents wanted to bring her back on the right path, but Chaitali perceived their efforts as strictness and opposition. Sometime later, when the situation at home calmed down a little, Chaitali spoke to Rizwan on the phone. She was furious and wanted revenge on her family. She convinced Rizwan to murder her parents. Rizwan too fell for Chaitali's words and without thinking agreed to commit the crime. After that, both of them started planning how to execute their horrific scheme. They spent days and nights discussing how to carry out the murders. Then came January 29th. It was the winter season. Around 1:30 p.m., Chaitali's father, Jamshedpur Bhaumik, had gone to work. Her brother Kalyan was also out of the house at that time. Inside the house were only Jamshedpur's wife Lucky, their daughter Chaitali, and Chaitali's elderly grandmother, Anita. As usual, after lunch, Anita went upstairs to her room to rest. Meanwhile, Chaitali's mother, Lucky, was busy with household chores. But Chaitali's focus was elsewhere. She kept looking toward the door as if she were expecting someone. When her mother was occupied with work, Chaitali quietly walked to the door and stood there, her eyes fixed on the path outside. After a while, the person she was waiting for arrived. It was none other than Rizwan. The two had a whispered conversation at the door, and then Chaitali quickly let Rizwan inside, shutting the door behind them. Her mother remained unaware as she was busy with chores, and her grandmother was already in deep sleep upstairs. Chaitali and Rizwan, without drawing any attention, hurried upstairs and directly entered the room where her grandmother Anita was sleeping. The moment they reached her, they attacked her. First, they forcefully covered her mouth and nose, suffocating her. She struggled desperately but could not scream as her breath was being cut off. Slowly, her movement stopped and her body turned cold. Anita was dead. Now it was time to dispose of the body. Chaitali and Rizwan picked up a sharp weapon and dismembered Anita's body into small pieces. They wrapped the body parts in a sheet and placed them in a corner. Afterward, they wiped away the bloodstains in the room. They took a deep breath, calmed themselves, and then stepped out of the room. Their next target was Chaitali's mother, Lucky. Chaitali entered the room first, followed by Rizwan. At that time, Lucky was resting, but before she could react or understand anything, Chaitali and Rizwan grabbed her neck and strangled her. Lucky gasped for breath, struggling against them, but gradually her breath stopped. She was dead. They repeated the same horrifying act, chopping her body into pieces, wrapping them in a sheet, and keeping them aside. Then they cleaned up the bloodstains from the room. Chaitali had now brutally murdered both her grandmother and mother. By now, 2 murders had been committed inside the Bhaumik household, but Chaitali and Rizwan were not done yet. They were preparing for the next step of their sinister plan. Next, Kalyan, Chaitali's younger brother, returned home in the evening. He went straight upstairs to meet his grandmother. As soon as he opened the door to her room, Chaitali and Rizwan pounced on him. They grabbed him by the throat and threw him down. Before he could scream for help, they strangled him to death. Once again, they followed the same gruesome process, chopping his body into pieces, wrapping the remains in cloth, and cleaning up all traces of blood. Time was passing, and one after another, the murders continued inside the Bhaumik household. 3 people were now dead. By this time, 3 bodies lay in pieces on the first floor of the house. However, one more murder was yet to happen. Chaitali and Rizwan were now waiting for their final target, Jamshedpur Bhaumik, Chaitali's father. Yes, the same Jamshedpur Bhaumik who once held his daughter's hand and taught her to walk. But today, his own daughter had annihilated her family. That evening, Jamshedpur returned home after finishing work. As he entered the house, Chaitali realized her father had arrived. The door was closed but not locked. She and Rizwan waited for him to come upstairs. The moment Jamshedpur stepped onto the first floor, Chaitali suddenly appeared in front of him, and Rizwan attacked from behind. They pushed him onto the bed and with ruthless determination, strangled him. Then, they used a sharp weapon to chop his body into pieces. Now, out of the 5 members of the Bhaumik family, 4 had been murdered. A chilling silence filled the house, but their work was not over yet. Now they had to dispose of the 4 corpses. Chaitali and Rizwan devised a plan to dump the body parts into the septic tank behind the house. They carried out their plan and sealed the tank. The next day, Rizwan brought cement and sand, prepared a mixture, and sealed the tank completely. It took them about 30 hours to commit the murders, clean up the evidence, and hide the bodies. After the crime, Rizwan left the house, but Chaitali stayed behind. This was part of their plan. If anyone came looking for her family, Chaitali would pretend that they had gone to a wedding. However, in June, Chaitali's maternal uncle visited their house, and the horrifying truth was uncovered. When the police began investigating, the shocking reality was revealed. Chaitali had planned the massacre of her own family. Eventually, both Chaitali and Rizwan were arrested. The case went to Jamshedpur Sessions Court, and after 1.5 years, on March 13, 2001, the court declared it one of the rarest of rare cases and sentenced both to death. However, Chaitali and Rizwan challenged the verdict in the High Court. On January 31, 2003, the Jharkhand High Court commuted their death sentence to life imprisonment. They then appealed to the Supreme Court, but in 2006, the Supreme Court upheld the life sentence. Both were sent to Hazaribagh jail, where Chaitali gave birth to a son. Years passed, and on October 2, 2018, both Chaitali and Rizwan were released from prison. Today, their son has grown up, but this horrific crime remains fresh in people's memories. A crime where a daughter brutally murdered her own parents, younger brother, and grandmother. This story is not meant to hurt anyone, but to make you aware and alert. What do you think about this case? Share your thoughts in the comments. If you found this information valuable, like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Thank you.